Welcome back to another edition of Straight Outta Flushing. Your boy Dexter Henry here alongside my guy, Tyler Ward, a.k.a. Wardy, here in the building. Wardy, it is a time for the New York Mets right now as we start off this week. They have lost 5 games in a row. It was not a good homestand. A week ago, felt like it was all good. They had won 4 games in a row. Now they've lost 5 in a row. Things are not good. I know the fans out there have concerns, Wardy. I have concerns. You have concerns. This is what this episode is about. We're going to get these concerns on the table. But first, my friend, how are you doing? Other than being concerned about the Mets.
Other than being concerned about the Mets, I'm doing well. You know, everything's been nice lately. I can't complain. There's only been one common denominator with there being issues in my life lately. And I think you can get the gist as to what that is regarding. So I think it's a perfect segue for us to get into this conversation on the New York Metropolitans.
All right, so here's what we're going to do, people, because, you know, Wardy and I try to keep things organized when we can. We are going to give our top 3 concerns with the 7-9 New York Mets right now. And I know some of you guys may have different. Wardy and I may have some different concerns. We're going to find these out. We're going to go from 3 to our number 1 concern with the Mets right now. I'm going to let Wardy kick things off. I will also let it be known I'm doing fine, other than the Mets being 7-9. I'm doing okay. Wardy, what's your
Good?
number
I'm glad.
3?
If you weren't doing okay, I was thinking maybe we shouldn't do this then, because it's only going to make it worse. So
yes, it might make things worse. It might make things worse. But Wardy, what's your number 3 concern? Since we're giving 3 each, what's your number 3 concern right now with the New York Mets?
My number 3 concern currently is, you know, I think it goes without saying, it has to be Francisco Lindor, right? If he's not 2, if he's not 1, he's got to be 3 here. And to all Mets fans, I feel that Francisco Lindor is, you know, a shell of what he once was. I'm not here to say that, nor am I here to say that he is obviously the largest problem / concern for this Mets team. But something that I'm sure that you can obviously agree with, as we'll get into what your number 3 will be in a second, is that Lindor this season, we understand the slow starts. This has been a commonality with him. But I also have reached the point in my fandom as a talking head, now as an on-field reporter here with the Post, just doing my own observation and really just letting things marinate over the years with what to expect with Francisco. And I've come to the realization, especially now more than ever, that we can't use this as an excuse anymore. Okay. Just because you are expected to maybe have a slow start, as he has typically done that more often than not as a New York Met, it doesn't justify it. And you could say, oh, well, you know, he had the hamate bone injury and he had to deal with that surgery and he is already, you know, back when maybe he shouldn't have been back as quickly as he was. Well, again, that excuse reaches a moot point when you see someone like Corbin Carroll raking to begin the year when he had the exact same procedure happen to him right around the same timeline as Francisco Lindor. So I'm not here to say that Lindor and Carroll are the same player. But what I am trying to get at is that these are 2 high-level players getting paid big bucks, and Lindor is your $341 million man. I think it's time that we stop being so normal and complacent with, oh, this guy is not going to start to pick it up until, say, mid-May of every single season, and that is supposed to be what it's supposed to be. I think all Mets fans can agree that, especially with Juan Soto being on the injured list currently, it has been imperative to see someone like Lindor, who up until this year, until Steve Cohen essentially said there will not be a captain as long as I am owner of this team, that he has essentially been the unofficial unsung captain of this New York Metropolitan organization. So knowing that and knowing what his role has been at this point, the value of Lindor, both offensively and defensively, has, in my honest opinion, been disheartening to see the lack of pace with him to begin the season. And it's more so because of us fans shouldn't be complacent anymore. It really comes down to that. It doesn't matter if it's game 12 of the season or 160 out of the 162. The last time I checked, Dexter, they all matter the same in the end, especially when you say miss a playoff by, 1, 2, or 3 games, and you don't take advantage of an early strength of schedule, which the Mets have had one of the most favorable schedules to begin the season, and they've done nothing to run away with it to this point, north of 3 weeks in. So that's one aspect of, I would say, the concern with Francisco Lindor. But do I know in the long run he's going to be okay offensively? I do. I absolutely do. I'm not really concerned with Lindor in the full 162 sample size. The only qualm that I have with that offensive approach really leans into the fact that he was, outside of Brett Baty, the most Jekyll and Hyde hitter for the Mets in their entire lineup last year, looking at home versus away. And that in itself is a problem, because if you're going to try to find consistency as an organization throughout the season, you need, again, your $341 million shortstop to be able to at least give you an over 700 OPS on the road, which he was unable to do so last year. He batted close to the Mendoza line, and when looking at OPS plus, was north of 30% below league average. At home, when my girl with Tatiana and his family in the stands,
Oh,
electric, north of a 300 average, just under 1,000 OPS. That's great. That's good and well. But that too reaches a moot point when you're only doing that half the season. There has been way too much Jekyll and Hyde going on with Lindor's offensive approach. And while he's not getting any younger, his value to the team is still just as important. And he's getting paid the same exact dollars. We need to see him find a consistency in his game that he did not show nearly enough this past year, which went in hand with the Mets' failures. Now, I'm going to let you take it away here with number 3 in a second because I have a feeling it may go in hand with this. But the other obvious factor is the mentality of Francisco Lindor. Dexter, take it away.
Yeah, I think for me, I think you hit on all the great points that I had to say. And look, I think one of the points you just made there, Wardy, is look, we understand that it is early in the season. And everybody knows about me. I'm not the guy that's going to be jumping off the ledge because we're 16 games in and the Mets are 2 games below 500. Not going to do that. I'm also not telling all the fans out there that there isn't reason to be concerned. We're doing this episode, and Wardy and I are saying there are things to be concerned about. And number 3 on my list is also Francisco Lindor. Now, Wardy made a fantastic point about the offense and the slow offensive starts that we've seen from Francisco Lindor. And I agree. That doesn't mean the fan base has to be complacent with it and think it's okay. And Wardy brought up the home and road splits that you've seen with him in terms of OPS and his production on the road and at home. You'd like to see that a little bit more balanced throughout, right? You'd love to see that all the time. We've seen the cold stretches from Francisco Lindor to start the season through about the same sample size, through about 15, 16 games. We've seen that in 2021. He had a 608 OPS through 15 games in 2024. And we know how that season turned around, right? 430, right? Only 2 RBIs in that stretch. But here we go through 16 games. His OPS is 572. He's hitting a $188 at the plate, right? He's not giving you much. He struck out 13 times. This hasn't been good, and it's not good enough, particularly, and we'll get to this later, particularly when Juan Soto is not in this lineup, which brings me a bigger concern. But offensive numbers aside, and I'm not saying that's not part of the reason to be concerned. Tyler just used the word mentality and mental. What we're seeing with Francisco Lindor right now that is the most concerning to me is the mental errors. That's it. We're seeing things. He's forgotten how many outs there are. When have we seen that from Francisco Lindor, the de facto captain on this team? Getting picked off, right? Not in the right position. We've seen all this just recently. This season, we've seen this from him. That's concerning from a guy that is looked at as the leader in this clubhouse. And I want to be very clear. I am not saying I do not think that Francisco Lindor is a leader. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying right now is on the field, because we look at production, right, Wardy? This is what we look at. We look at production.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. We look at this. He's having a bad stretch. Let's just call it what it is. Let's just keep it a buck. He's doing things that don't contribute to winning right now. Again, doesn't mean I don't think Francisco Lindor is a leader. I think he's a fantastic leader. I think he is a winning player. Right now, he's not doing it. And then he's doing it at a time when the Mets do not have their best offensive player in the lineup. And we'll get to the lineup. Trust me, we will. But he's not doing the little things. And one of the things that I think Mets fans love and folks who cover the team love about Francisco Lindor is you can trust him to do the little things, even when the batting is not great, even when he's not hitting at his best. He gets off to these slow starts. Again, we've seen this movie before. I'm not saying get used to it, but what we haven't seen before is when he's not hitting at the plate, that mental lapses, right? Getting picked off, not being in position to make the right plays. Those are things we haven't seen with Francisco Lindor. And when I see that, little alarm bell starts going off, Wardy, because I'm like, what's going on here? Why is his head not seem to be in the game? And listen, he's talked about it, and I respect it. Francisco Lindor, this is where a leader shows up. He has not shied away from it. He said that he needs to be better, and he damn sure is going to have to be better if the Mets are going to get where they're going to go. Because right now, with all the concerns you have about this team, if he's not doing the little things, Wardy, they can't win. They can't win because the margin for error is very slim, particularly with what we've seen from this lineup. And I'm not saying it can't get better, but if Francisco Lindor's not doing the little things, my friend, that is a problem. And so that's a bigger concern for me because I guess what I'm saying is I believe at some point he's going to figure it out at the plate. I'm not as worried about that. I'm not going to be the one to say he's cooked. I'm not using the C word here, people. Some people might want to say that already. I'm not going to say that. He is 32. Could this be the start of his decline? Sure. Usually the end of prime for a lot of players. Sure. Could be. I'm not willing to go there yet. But the lack of focus, Wardy, that's like I said, the alarm bell's been going off with that. I'm like, what's going on here? I don't know about you, but that's very concerning to me.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Carlos Mendoza, Mets skipper, over the past 24 hours at the time I was recording, after the Game 2 loss to the Athletics, stated to the media himself that something's not right here. Like, he's never
Yep.
seen ever for him to make these kind of blunders. To hear Jerry Blevins, former Mets reliever, doing a great job as an analyst now, being very truthful and honest, speaking on TV, saying verbatim, I would never say anything that I wouldn't say to Francisco myself. But someone needs to ask him if he's okay, because there's clearly something that's wrong here. And you can tell that there's obviously something wrong, because even today, at the time of us talking, Lindor was the only Met to record multiple hits in the ball game out of the Mets' 4 hits, and of course, their series sweeping defeat to the Athletics. But it didn't matter much, because after Lindor's first hit to begin the game, he's picked off trying to steal second base.
Yep.
When we look at the day prior, the game that I was in attendance with, covering here for the Post, what do we see? Him completely in a wrong defensive alignment to turn a double play. That would have helped Kodai Senga get out of that inning, potentially unscathed. And instead, it costed Senga more runs, and that went in hand with the snowball of Senga giving up 7 earned runs and not even 3 full innings. We look 3 days ago. Okay, let's go to third base.
Oh, yeah.
Getting caught that we saw.
Mhm.
Like, there's no way to justify it. Nick Kurtz hesitates, trying to see, does he want to turn a double play or does he want to get the force out at Lindor? All Lindor needed to do was stay at third, and he was not able to do so. We think less than a week ago, Lindor's caught at first base, sleeping, looking like he could read a book there because he's not paying attention. All these little things about Lindor that's made him such an elite player to this point in his career have completely went down the drain, to the point that it is a detriment to the team. It is costing the Mets games. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. These blunders, when you only have, as you said yourself, Dexter, so much margin for error, is absolutely terrible for a Mets team right now that, again, needs someone like Lindor to step up without Juan Soto here more than anything else. And
Yeah.
listen, Lindor said it himself to the media over the past couple of days that Soto is irreplaceable, and we just basically have to do the best that we can. That is true. No one is like Juan Soto. Juan Soto is the only player this season for the Mets, up until his injury, that recorded at least 1 hit every single game that he played. There's an element to having a guaranteed player to get on base 2 to 4 times a game, the way that Soto does, that no one else can really find in comparison when looking at this top to bottom lineup. But for Lindor, knowing you're paid the big dollars, knowing that you have been the face of this team so long, something has to give sooner rather than later. We know Carlos Mendoza has obviously had closed door conversations with Lindor, and that went in hand as to why he played for the Sunday day game. But my qualm as a fan, especially just putting like talking head or reporter aside, just solely a fan perspective, is why are you running Lindor back out there? I know that he's stubborn. I know Lindor is the first to tell you he will do everything in his power to play every single game. He's the same guy that, going back to a couple years ago when the Mets went to LA, jammed and essentially broke his middle finger right away in a door right as he flew down to LA and only missed 1 game out of it. He's a gamer. We know he is, but we don't need him to be a gamer when the game he's playing right now is a detriment to the club. And that's what's been happening. There needs to be some type of accountability held. And whether that is, again, give him an off day, whether he likes or not, it doesn't matter. Last time I checked, Lindor does not run this team. It should be David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza. It shouldn't matter the money that you're making. It comes down to the top to bottom, who is making these decisions. So if it bothers Lindor, okay, let that be fuel to the fire then to get the best out of him. Now, what's going on behind the scenes mentally? Your guess is as good as mine, Dexter.
I don't like speculating on that. I'm not going to do that. I won't speculate.
I will say this though, without speculating, there's just one thing that has pondered in my brain regarding this that I wonder if there's
I wonder if this is something I heard from someone else. Go ahead. I'm curious. Go ahead.
What do you think I'm going to say? Let's start with that.
Okay, so somebody who works on one of our shows brought up to me today. They think, I hate doing this, so I'm going to put, it's not me saying this, but they think there could be an injury that possibly came from a play. It just came, I'm forgetting which Pirates game this was, when Lindor was thrown out at the plate. Thought there possibly could have been something with him hitting his head on the slide.
Lindor was out by a mile,
out by a mile,
home.
Yep, when he got sent in that. Was that the second game against the Pirates? Or
I think no, the Mets won the second game. I think it was the third game that they lost.
Sunday game.
Yes.
Third game they lost. They won the first 2. Sorry, 16 games have all blown together for me
I
so
know,
far.
no, it's been a fast 2.5 weeks. Seriously, it really has.
I don't like speculating on injuries for the month, but this person was like, "Yeah, I wonder if there was something that happened on that play." He did get up gingerly after that play. I will say that. I don't know. I was wondering if you were going to injury or that was it. I heard that, but what do you have?
Yeah, no, I mean, if this was an injury related thing, you wouldn't see him have the mental lapses he has because one
See,
does
I
not
agree with that too.
correlate to
I
the other.
agree.
He clearly looks out of it just from a public perception standpoint. He does not look like his typical self. And we have seen that because, again, we expect him to be able to handle all these little things without a problem. So for me, there's a couple things I think of, and I'm not at all trying to say this to push a narrative or anything like that. It's just my honest opinion. If this is at all reasoning, one of them, I think of Steve Cohen. I think of Steve Cohen so adamantly telling Howie Rose in his season preview for the Mets on their platform how there will never be a captain while I'm owner of this team. And the reason
Hmm.
why I think about this has a bit to do with the fact that Lindor has been put on a pedestal as the face and the leader of this franchise since his inception of being here in 2021.
Hmm.
And what has changed over the past calendar year? Well, it's been twofold. It's been one, Juan Soto joined the team, which means that this is no longer just Lindor's team.
Hmm.
And as we have seen over this past offseason, it is more Juan Soto's team than it ever has been before. The Mets don't deplete the core the way that they did without not only getting approval from the top guys, but also knowing that this is Juan's team down. That's 1,000% a fact. Then you add in the fact of if Steve Cohen is so adamantly saying this, as basically a counter to fans who have wanted to see a captain label on Lindor, one does have to wonder how does Lindor feel about that? Because when he spoke to the media about it, he didn't talk about it really in a positive light or anything. He just said essentially it is what it is, and that's fine. It's his right to make that decision. But Lindor has again been viewed by the fans and been viewed by many people in the organization as that guy.
Hmm.
And when I think of last year, David Wright Day and the build up to that, I think of there was a clip that was put out by MLB.com at the time that they then took down. And it was a video of Mets captains getting set for David Wright's day. And it was notable because in that video, they had Francisco Lindor at the end of it. And
Hmm.
they then took that down after it got steam because I think there was a misunderstanding or a lack of communication either between the Mets and MLB or vice versa, where they didn't want that out there. So one does have to wonder, because I've been wondering genuinely,
Hmm.
has that at all factored into the early mental lapses? Has it been the fact that this is no longer Lindor's team in ways that he has viewed it as such? I could be
Hmm.
completely wrong, and that's fine. This is just my opinion of what I've been trying to connect the dots with
Right.
from what we know publicly. Because privately, that opens up the entire floodgates of any and every possibility. And you and I are not going to sit here and speculate for the next hour on that.
No, but what I will say is, I think what you're saying, Wardy, is rooted in logic. And what I want to I don't want to put words in your mouth. So if I say anything wrong, please jump in and let me know.
Of course.
I think that what you're doing is, and I think we don't do this enough in sports. I'm actually kind of glad we're having this discussion. Is there's a human element to things. I always say this: players have agency, players have to go out and produce, and we'll talk a lot about players producing and not producing in this episode. But you have to understand they are still human. And to your point, Tyler, they are going to feel kind of ways about things. I'm not saying I know that Francisco Lindor is feeling a way about something, but it's not illogical to think that he was. If he has been the face, he has been the face of this franchise. He has been held or viewed as a captain, even though it's not a actual title that has been given to him, but he is viewed that way. And if it has been changed, and if he felt some kind of way about Steve Cohen's comments or that video being removed, because I could understand that. Now, some of you out there might say, well, Dex and Wardy, that's what the money's for, right? To quote Don Draper from Mad Men, that's what the money's for. Yeah, but no matter how much money you make, no matter what we do, we still feel a way about the work that we do and how we're treated around that,
And this
right?
is something that a lot of fans don't understand,
Yeah.
at all. And
Yeah.
as someone like myself who's been able to grow in this industry more, I understand it more than I ever have
They ever
before.
have.
You
Right.
you you can again, you can get paid 20 to 40 million dollars a year, but if you are not mentally well, doesn't
Facts.
matter. It doesn't matter at all.
Facts.
Again, there's a reason why money really cannot buy happiness.
Cannot buy happiness, right? And the thing is, now I do want to bring full context to this. Again, Wardy, if I'm saying anything that's out of what you're saying, please let me know. Regardless of what you're paid, we understand this is a results business. Okay. This is a results business. We just talked about it. We just criticized Francisco Lindor. He is not producing. He has got to produce. Sometimes in your life, and I say this with respect to everybody out there, sometimes in your life, you're going to have rough days. There's rough things are going to happen in your life. You're still going to have to go to work. You're still going to have to do it. You should take care of your mental health first, of course. Just want to be very clear about that. But you're still going to be expected to produce. And so all that is going on. I wonder if what you're theorizing here, just putting out there, Wardy, is I think it's not illogical. I think it's fine. There's been a lot of change for Francisco Lindor in how he could be possibly viewed in the organization, how fans might view him, how the team has changed around him. There's been a lot of change with the team. That's something he's going to feel. So at the end of the day, he's got to produce. I just want to get to one thing that you said that I actually agree with you. I'm sure you're going to hit on this a little bit more later. If Francisco Lindor's head is not in the right place and he needs a day off, he's got to have a day off. Take a day
exactly,
off.
Dex.
We love that he's a gamer. Love it. Love that you try to show up every day, be there for the team. And that's why I said I will never question the leadership of Francisco Lindor. Not going to hear from me. I think the man is a leader. But sometimes in being a leader, no matter what you do, any kind of work, sometimes you got to know when you got to say, hey, I don't got it right now. Right now, I'm not getting it done. I'm hurting the team. I got to step to the side. I got to let this other person do this. It's not about ego. You got to strip that ego, man.
Taking the words out of my mouth right now.
Yeah. 100%. Okay. So we're on the same page. You got to strip that ego, right, Wardy? And sometimes stripping the ego might be taking a day off or two. Now, here's the problem for the Mets as we go from the athletic series. They don't really got time. They got to go play the Dodgers on Monday, right? Like there's no time for this. And Dodgers are playing the best baseball in baseball right now. There's really not much time for this, but at what cost? At what cost, my friend? If this is hurting the team too much, you might want to say, I don't need to do that. And I think if Francisco Lindor, I'm not going to speculate on what it is, but let's just say he's not in a good place. Let's just, whatever that may be, right. He's not in a good place. I think he's got to look within himself and see what we're talking about. And I'm sure other fans are saying this too, that to your words, Wardy, what he's doing is costing the team games right now. And I'm not talking about just more. I'm less talking about at the plate. I'm talking about more in the field and on the base paths. That's what I'm really talking about, right? He's got to see that and say, yo, I got to take a step back. So I agree with you on that 100%. Now, and I'm sure you'll get to this. Some of that on Mendoza, sure. But the player himself, too, and the organization have to come. Because one of the things I've credited David Stearns for, and you've heard me say this in some videos we've done, I like that David Stearns, there'll be some accountability, especially in the bullpen, although they didn't do that as quickly as I would like with some people this year. That's another story. But I agree. Use that word, too. Accountability. I think there's got to be some here. Nobody's above that. I'm with you. I'm with you, Wardy, on this. I'm with you. And I think we both have Francisco Lindor at number 3. Maybe some people have it higher, but I think our concerns are valid. I do think our concerns are valid. But to move on, what do you have at number 2? We won't stay on Francisco Lindor the whole time. What do you got at number 2?
At number 2, we have something that regards not only Lindor, but the entire team itself. And it's a combination of a couple things, but it's really just a lack of team unity, identity, and fundamentals. Okay. This is all stuff that every winning team in baseball needs. And while we are north of just 3 weeks in the season, the sky is not falling, regardless of them having lost 5 straight games. Again, I can kick and scream about it with my immediate reactions when I do my live streams always, but it doesn't change my long-term point of view. Like you can have the short-term reaction while knowing that we're still a couple weeks in and there needs to be time to marinate here. But having said that, there's something to be said about a team that had the amount of turmoil and change that they had yet again this past offseason. There has been a trend and drastic change almost yearly under Steve Cohen because there has been a lack of performance. And because of that continued trend of changing things up to the drasticness that they have, it creates at times a bit of a problem in trying to come together as a group because you don't have a lot of guys that have been around each other constantly, especially after trading away and parting ways with players in which they have, whether it has been Alonso, Nimmo, McNeil, and, Diaz, even though they want him back, it didn't happen. The point is that when you lose players like that and you lose the foundation of your team, to think you can just build it up right away without doing proper evaluation and making them come together from a tight-knit group standpoint and playing loose, playing fun, and not having that ego, that is going to do them well. But when I look at this team currently, I see a team filled with egos. I see a team that is not playing in unity, but are playing more individually. And that was exactly what the Mets were doing last year, especially from June onward, where they were not able to handle their adversity. And it was top down, all collective issue from David Stearns to Carlos Mendoza to the team itself. So this is not just on one individual here. This is collectively a problem. And for David Stearns, I look at it in particular and I say, you know that you changed a lot about this team in a short period of time. So it does start with you to a degree when we look at why this team isn't finding the unity yet, right? Because there needs to be something to be had here sooner rather than later and getting the best out of these players, whether playing loose or playing fun. And I always defer back to the 2024 Mets, their magical run, because while the Mets entered that season with the largest payroll in baseball, which they have done each of the past 2 years since, what is true is that it took a player on a minor league contract to give them the spark that they felt that they needed. That in lies the problem, okay? Whether it's a JD Martinez that you signed late in spring training, to then JD whispering in the ear of Carlos Mendoza after Jorge Lopez throws his glove in the stands and they have the team meeting saying, hey, you should consider Jose Iglesias. You know, he might not be the best player, but he's a vibes guy and he's really going to help bring the team morale up. Not only did he do that, he played the best baseball in his career in a half season sample size. Lindor got shifted to leadoff, which he hadn't done since Cleveland. And it was just a perfect storm for things to go right for them. But this still brings me to my point. You have the fattest payroll in baseball entering every single season, and it takes that kind of minute move to make such a drastic difference. There's something to be said about the Mets not finding that since, regardless of the dollars that they've been spending. And they've spent a lot. So when you see the 2025 Mets have no unity, no theme, no true excitement. I mean, even when they were doing their celebrations after homers, it was just like, whoop-de-doo, Basil. Like, it didn't have that same kind of feel. Whereas you see 2026 Mets, it's eerily similar to that. That, in my opinion, is a problem. And that's something that doesn't just change overnight. And that comes as things marinate longer. But the marination has to be a group that is holding each other accountable while being loose and fun at the same time. And it's hard to get a quick turnaround when you have the amount of turmoil that they had. That's why spring training is important. And that's why the WBC did nothing but hurt the Mets this year in that regard by having the majority of their top players go play for their respective countries and not focus on building more of that clubhouse culture that they could have been doing while at spring training. It's no one's individual fault.
Right.
It's just a matter of fact. Unfortunately, they got dealt a bad hand given this year's circumstance. And now they need to make up for it. So I look at the lack of unity. I look at the lack of identity with this team that they most certainly did not have last year. And they haven't had any year pretty much outside of 2024. Even in 2022, when they had so many things going right, they built an identity to a degree of playing more small ball baseball, scrappy wins, entertaining, and their vibes. That was good. But once the pressure started cooking for them and that level of adversity came in, they had no clue how to adjust and handle it. In 2024, they not only adjusted, but they made every Mets fan feel great about that year, regardless of them losing to the Dodgers. So you were just grateful that they got to that point because of how much happened and how entertaining that year was. And that set the table for 2025 that completely failed to meet any expectation. And now this year, another year with no identity start, no unity. And now you're telling me they don't have fundamental play? You're telling me that David Stearns, who prides himself on building team defense, is saying to media over this past week that I'm happy with the team defense so far. Are you sure, David? That makes one of us. With all due respect, I'm not looking at this team right now and looking at a fundamentally sound club. You know, when you have multiple players playing different positions for the first time in their career, clearly seeing that be a negative at times. Not even talking much on Bichette because he has quietly actually been a stronghold statistically early since his first rough series. Not really been much of a defensive problem there. But, you know, with the inconsistency still at first base, the outfield, whether you're having Beatty there or Bench, who should not be playing in left. I don't know why they're giving many reps in left field. That's beyond comprehension.
Keep them in
for
center,
me, but I
right?
won't go on that tangent. Back-to-back games there with an error. I digress. So this brings me to my point. There's just a lot of little things that are not working right for this team, and it's not just one person to blame. It's a collective effort that they need to be better with.
So before I want to get to my number two, I was listening to hear all that, and I thought you made great points about the unity and identity, which is a word. I think teams find their identity through as you pointed out, spring training and season. Spring training is important for that. I completely agree with that. They find that chemistry, they find that unity there too. I've been seeing a lot of the fan base on social media. A lot of it. This feels like 2025 again. And I know where people are coming from, Wardy. I get it, right? Like, I get it. At the same time, I also want to be like, yo, let's pump the brakes. 10% of the season's been played. Like, let's relax just a little bit. I think for the Mets fan, and I say this lovingly, I get there's always this the sky is falling mentality. But I also see with the energy that you've seen through 16 games, I'm not trying to talk at the both sides of the mouth. I'm just saying I understand that this feels like 2025. I think we got to give this team a little bit more time before we get to that. But I do understand why with the changes you've seen or asked to happen or think was, going to happen, and now David Stearns has made these changes and reshaped the roster, you think it would feel different or look different, right? And you're looking at this and you're like, kind of feels the same, right? Kind of, which is not what the fan wanted. I would say, which is why I think it's appropriately put as number 2 on your list. So I would say, I'm not saying to you, Wardy, I would say give it a little more time, but it does raise my eyebrow because things feel the same. It also has felt a lot different since Juan Soto's went on the IL. Even energy-wise, I just want to say that. Not just the approach at the plate, and I'll get to that in a second, but energy-wise, it's felt different. So I think it's good points by you. Unity is something I think you have to build. Chemistry is something I think you have to build. It can build.
Which I agree. And I don't think they can't build it. I just think it's more so that recency bias really rings true for fans right now.
Yeah.
Because you know how you mentioned 10% of the season we're in, that kind of thing. Well, here I was June 12th of last year when Senga went down with injury, telling everybody it's going to be okay. Then we get to July.
Fair point.
Trying to tell people it's going to be all right.
Yep.
We're getting close to the trade deadline. Things aren't going right. Afterwards, things ain't going right after the first week and a half in August, okay? So the issue with fans to grasp that is more so we tried to sell this and we tried to believe in that. And for a consistent stretch of the majority of the season last year, once May was wrapped up, they were over 10 games below 500 and were a bottom 4 team in Major League Baseball. So I hear you, and I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying I think every fan has the right to have their level of reservation early.
Oh, yeah, because it's not always going to be 2024, right? I was at that game when Lopez threw his glove in the stands.
2024 is the anomaly.
Right, it's the anomaly. Frank. I was at that game, and I was like, man, this is this
rock
season.
Bottom.
I want rock bottom. I wanted to blow. I think we talked after that. And I was like, I want to blow it up. Yeah, you're right. And last year I was kind of like you, so you were not alone. I was like, oh, it's going to be okay. They're going to turn it around. Here's what I will say: it's early, but it can get late early. That's right. That's what I'll say to that. It's early, but it can get late early. So my number 2, just to keep things moving, so we don't keep people.
Oh, please, yes.
Okay. We talked at the start of this season, or off season, I'll say, about things that we thought needed to happen, and I was the person who said, "Hey, Kodai Senga is the biggest X factor for this team." But my number 2 concern right now is the pitching. And if you would have asked me a week ago, I wouldn't have said this to you. I'd have been like, "Yo, pitching's pretty good. Bullpen's looking strong. Starters have been okay." But now, Luke Weaver struggled recently, right? Giving up 6 runs.
I talked to him yesterday pregame. It's my fault. I'm the jinx.
I blame you, Wardy.
It's 100% me.
6 runs over his last 2 appearances, right? David Peterson, he's not looked good his last 2 starts, and he's going to make his next one, and I think it's a big one for him because you want to talk about somebody who can get late early for, that can be him. He needs to turn things around, okay? Now, thank God your boy, Richard Lovelady, is gone. DFA.
My boy.
Luis Garcia, didn't need to see him either. Gone. Now, and that doesn't mean I'm super excited. Craig Kimbrell, we hope he comes up and can pitch well. Hope he can recapture some of the magic, and we hope so. But the bullpen's gotten a little shaky. Now, I know this sounds crazy, me saying pitching is my number 2 after the series finale against the Athletics, where Freddie Peralta had clearly his best start of the season, and Sean Manaea in relief was perfect. and was really good. He's somebody I've had a question about his velocity and all this good stuff.
It's finally starting to
Starting
creep
to
up
come
a
up a
bit.
little bit.
He's
Yeah,
starting to sit more
starting.
that 91 area, and that's encouraging just because while it's been a slow roll, you are seeing a level of projection that you weren't getting his first couple outings.
Yes, which was concerning to me, very concerning to me.
Very much
And
so.
other people I talk to who know pitching a lot better than me are like, yo, if this does not change soon, you should be worried. And the Mets themselves are probably worried. Now, I think it was a little masked too that he was getting outs, though, regardless of the low velocity. But still, I was like, that's not sustainable to me in the majors today. And that's a red flag, right? Like, that's just not sustainable. Now, overall, this pitching lately has been shaky. And I didn't even mention my guy, Kodai Senga, not having a good start on Saturday against the Athletics. And I want to also be clear about something because you mentioned this earlier, and the Mets, you talked about the schedule. And I think when we looked at the schedule, we said, okay, the Mets should fatten up on low-level competition. And that has not happened. Should. Keyword is should, right? Operative word is should. That has not happened. They are 7-9. They are 2 games under 500. I do want to put some respect on the Athletics name, though. The Athletics just came to New York and they went 5-1. Okay,
yeah. They're going to be. I'm sorry to cut you off. You'll appreciate this.
Yeah.
I was talking with a reporter friend of mine at the game yesterday, and she was giving massive pushback to me because I was telling her, I'm like, don't be surprised when you see the Athletics as a top 7 offensive team this year. Their offense is legit, even without Brent Rooker right now. Like they top to bottom have honestly, in my opinion, one of the more impressive lineups in baseball. It'll come down to pitching for them, which is ironic considering we're talking about that with the Mets right now. But pitching was the main thing that they're going to need to fix. But no, that A's lineup is very much legit. People just don't pay attention to the A's enough. But I hope that this kind of puts them on the map a bit because Shea Langeliers is named after Shea Stadium, leading the charge, of course, at Citi Field yet again against this Mets team.
Yeah, of course it would. But listen, lately, and I'm not sure I would have had pitching as number 2 here a week ago. But lately, it's not been good. And I think they're in this very interesting situation where this week, in particular, some guys in this staff and in the pen have got to get things right. Now, look, Weaver, last couple of appearances, like I said, have not been good, giving up 6 runs. He's been really good before that. The Mets bullpen has been really good this year. I do not want to, despite your boy, Dickie Lovelady, and Luis Garcia.
You got to stop with these your boy talks and Dickie Lovelady. This is insane. This is crazy. I mean, we got to make it a joke again at this point.
We got you. I'm joking.
That's he'll be back by June.
Oh God, come on, Wardy, come on. Nobody was happy to see me get. Listen, well, I sound mean saying that. I'm never happy about people losing their jobs, but
no ill will.
No ill will.
Media. That's all.
It's a performance-based business, and I don't think most Mets fans wanted to see Tyler's boy out there, right? Like I don't think that's what they want to see. All jokes, but in all seriousness, David Peterson, big next start for him, obviously. So if this does not get right, particularly with all the stuff that we've said before, this has to be a concern. Now, before this homestand or before this 5-game losing streak, I felt really good about the pitching and what they were doing, and they were keeping the Mets in the games despite the offense not producing. But the pitching's got to turn it around. So that's concern number 2 for me here. Pitching's got to turn it around.
Yeah, I'll be brief on this. The pitching, the main issue for me is that you basically ran it back with everyone the same this year, with the exception of adding Freddie and now getting hopefully a full healthy season of Nolan McClain. So it's not the same looking rotation, but you have too much of guys that you were so comfortable to shop last year. And this goes in hand with how I feel with having both Beatty and Vientos here again, even Mauricio to a degree. Like there's something to be said about shopping guys all off season long and then saying, you know what, we couldn't get the deal we were looking for. We're going to run it back with them. In my opinion, that is complacency. And I don't like that. It really does grind my gears, especially David Peterson, who the Mets still believe in. But you can tell that there's a leash now. There's only so much of a leash because when Carlos Mendoza, I was in the press room with everyone when Peterson had that bad start this past week, and it was a quick, just a couple questions and out of there, and he was asked, what's Peterson's role in this rotation right now, and I believe that was by our friend Will Salmon, and the reply to that was, at the time of me talking right now, yes. And I will always emphasize whenever a manager makes that exact kind of quote, because that's him saying between the lines, right now, yes, but should this continue? No. He just is not going to go out of his way to verbatim say that, not going to throw a player under the bus, especially because with Peterson, there was a misunderstanding. Will had just reported over this past week, as others have, that Peterson and Mendoza weren't properly communicating and how to attack batters. There was a lapse in understanding and communication there, including Justin Miller, the Mets pitching coach. Now,
Yep.
Mendoza has since kind of refuted that and said that they've essentially fixed whatever that issue was, but there was a lapse in communication. And, we talk about the inconsistencies with pitching. David Pearson has a, right around 8 ERA going over his last 12 starts to last June. It's not like this just started yesterday. So that's why his leash should not and cannot be long, regardless
Absolutely.
of the fact that he's in a walk year. I know he wants a bag, but that bag is not going to come from the New York Mets. And I wholeheartedly believe that regardless as to what David Pearson does or doesn't do for the Mets this year, this is his final year as a New York Met with the amount of depth that they have in their farm as is. I'm very comfortable and confident in saying that. Not a slight on him personally, just my own observation as a fan to see how the Mets have operated with these kind of things.
Yeah.
So understanding that and knowing that this is kind of a make or break year one way or the other for Peterson, it's imperative for him to obviously try to right his wrong. And he gassed out, he flamed out last year, having the heaviest workload he's ever had. That's been to his detriment still. He has not been able to go deep into games the way that you need him to, and had leaned on him to for a calendar year from June 2024 to then June of 2025. He was nails. He was your guy. Now he's just a guy that you can, live without in your rotation at the moment. Kodai Senga, another brilliant point. I'm still trying to wrap my head around why Kodai Senga thought it was a good idea to throw his sweeper 25% of the time to lefty sluggers in the A's lineup, throwing meatballs middle, which no one should be surprised is getting raked out of the ballpark. How much of that is on Francisco Alvarez? How much of that is on Senga's lack of proper positioning of the pitches? And how much of that is on the Mets coaching staff? Because the Mets have entered the fold this year, as it's been reported, as one of multiple teams that are actually calling the shots from the dugout. So it's not like this is just an Alvarez Senga dynamic or Terren Senga, and it should have been Terren Senga because Senga's had the best starts in his career with Terren's, not Alvarez. But what do I know, Mendy? So you have that going on, and then you have all these other aspects of the rotation that it's kind of redundant. Where again, if Sean Manaea doesn't work out this year, even as a reliever, Mets are going to have to make a decision there. Regardless of the money that they're spending on him. You look at the rotation. Freddie Peralta looked fantastic, and you gave him a nothing burger in return. We talk a lack of pitching. It's funny. If you actually look over the homestand, 4 of the Mets' 6 games, they got quality pitching for the most part, but the offense wasn't there. It's one of those things where when you have the pitch, you don't have the offense. When you have the offense, you don't have the pitching. We've seen this sauna dance a million times over as baseball fans. Obviously, it's just the nature of the beast. So I think for the rotation, I'm not overly concerned. It's the bullpen and the usage, because David Stearns loves to make sure that the back end of the bullpen, like the final 2 spots to round out, are essentially fringe guys. And that is complacency, in my opinion. That too bothers me, because the Mets had all offseason to be more proactive in adding a quality lefty to pair with Brooks Raley until AJ Minter return at minimum, if not have 3. Thankfully, they kind of have found that now. And Sean Manaea kind of being the swing man. So I'm not putting heavy emphasis there. But like Dickie Lovelady being in valuable, tied ball game spots to begin the season is just downright, it's hard to fathom. Let's put it that way.
It's malpractice. I'm calling malpractice.
Exactly. It's malpractice is what it is. And Luis Garcia, there's a reason why you had to sign him to just $1.75 million to essentially be your Ryan Stanek replacement. And you could argue you'd want Ryan Stanek right now. That's how low the bar is. So the point is when you have, again, 2 to 3 bullpen spots with so much uncertainty every year under David Stearns, at some point you need to point the finger and say, hey, all right, David, maybe let's change the thought process a bit, because I'm all for having one bullpen spot being like your wild card, because that is where you could really take advantage of DFAs, considering guys up from the minor leagues, and kind of going about a rotation of different guys to choose from to see what sticks and what doesn't. I don't hate that. What I hate is when you do it for multiple spots in the bullpen, because then you quickly have a bullpen that if one of your quality arms are down with injury, just like that, snap of the finger, you're in the same spot you were last year. And the Mets found themselves utilizing the most pitchers ever in Major League Baseball history, from a lack of consistency of their bullpen to everything that went awry with their rotation. So I think being concerned with the pitching is valid, because even while I don't think it's been a huge detriment to this point of the year, it's true that if history at all, does the same thing again, there is going to be rightful levels of concern. So I'm with you on that. And I think Having said that, is there anything else you'd like to add before we get to number one?
No, I don't. Actually, I want to get to number one. We're gonna get real quickly. We'll give our number ones and we'll get out of here. I'm very curious as to what your number one is. What's your number one here? Your number one concern with the Mets right now?
I did not have this on my bingo card during the season. I like to make that clear.
Okay.
But we're here now. And it's not just because we're 3 weeks in. It's because I'm seeing way too much of the same since he first became manager. And it's Mets skipper
Ooh.
Carlos Mendoza. And this is, again, not a personal slight on him. I like Mendy. I know Mendy knows me well. I don't have any ill will against him. Will I get hot-headed about him? Will I say some things that probably, aren't the most ideal times? Absolutely. I'm a fan at the end of the day. And it's hard to suppress those emotions when I spend my hard-earned money and my focus and my entire livelihood is built around my fandom of a team. It's really hard to separate that at times. Having said that, though, Carlos Mendoza is giving me way too much of the same. I think back, and I have reiterated this constantly in my audience. I'll say this to you, Dexter.
Yeah.
At the end of season presser, Carlos Mendoza had last year, he started by holding himself accountable. He said how this starts with me. I need to be doing a much better job
Did say that.
at bringing this team together because there wasn't identity and there wasn't unity. Okay, heard you, Mendy. I appreciate you saying that, especially when you went all year saying, we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. On to the next, on the next, on the next, on the next. Just basically avoiding accountability all throughout the year when the Mets were on the worst slide that we've seen in recent franchise history. That's saying a lot. I don't know if you guys know the history of the Mets, but no bueno, not all that great. Few and far in between when it comes to success. So we get to 2026, and we're seeing lapses in his bullpen decision making. Clearly, I hate the lack of explanation as well. And this is something that I do hope I get an opportunity to do more here with the post when I am part of media scrums. We'll find out. But, like when certain reporters will ask, I'm not naming names, just people in general will ask a question. For example, Carlos, why didn't you use so-and-so in the bullpen today? And his response will be, oh, well, player X and player Y weren't available today. Okay. My question is, why? Ask the follow-up. Ask why exactly that is. Because on one hand, you see a Devin Williams who was warming up on opening day in the bullpen, never pitched because Garcia didn't look great. Warming up. Mets had an off day that Friday, and you mean to tell me that he's not available at all? That's Saturday. Brooks Raley, you see throw 11 pitches, and he's not available the next day. Fans will say, oh, it's because he's coming back from Tommy John. I'm sorry. He had 30 outings last year returning from Tommy John. This is not something that he is just coming back from. It's again, that I'm not buying too much. So for me, it feels like malpractice when you put Dickie Lovelady at any type of close or tied ball game that could dictate the Mets winning and losing a game, regardless as to what his result is. Just that decision alone, in my opinion, is a massive problem when I know that you likely have someone available. You may say that they're not, but you made that decision. And the uncertainty there bothers me from a fan perspective. Then you add in the lineups. And the lineups has really grinded my gears early, okay? Since Juan Soto has went out with injury, we have seen Jared Young bat in the 3-hole 2 out of the past 3 games. And I don't dislike Jared Young. I actually think he's been a nice, valuable little player for the Mets, especially whether it's first looking good or giving you some hits. And I know the thought process for Carlos Mendoza is, well, we need a lefty bat in the top 3, so we're going to put Jared Young there.
Right.
But that's therein lies the problem. It shouldn't be so black and white the way that it appears that it is with his decision making. And then you have Francisco Alvarez, who has been one of the most consistent hitters for the Mets since the start of the year. It took 2.5 weeks for Carlos Mendoza to finally realize he should move into the top 6. And when he moved into the top 6, hits a dead center home run, has a multi-hit game, and is quality for you. Okay, it's almost like if you just, again, from a fan perspective, if you're paying attention to these little things, you can realize when it's time to make these decisions. To then today, at the time I was talking, Alvarez and Robert, 2 of your hottest bats in your lineup, you don't have in the lineup in your series finale game against the A's. I don't care that you have a gauntlet of a schedule in LA coming up. Okay. Last time I checked, Robert, if you are so focused on making sure he stays healthy, you should meet the middle, which is put him at DH for a game. Jorge Polanco didn't look great his first couple at bats. Take him out. Bring Robert in. Consider Francisco Alvarez, which he has already gotten a DH start this year. It's little things like that that really do bother me because it feels like, again, a lot of average fans can just kind of put these things together in ways that Mendoza has been consistently behind the 8 ball on. And this goes back to last year. This goes back to 2024 with his heavy mismanagement of the bullpen, but he gave him the benefit of the doubt because it was year one as his first time as a manager, and the Mets had their run. So it's like, okay, you know what? Mendy, he wasn't perfect, but we don't need him to be perfect. That's fine. The manager's in the MLB, all I hear that. But we are now a year and a half in of really incompetent baseball being played with him at the helm. And in this market, with this kind of pressure, this is not something that I could see persisting as we get to the halfway mark of the year without there being a drastic change. Because what'll happen then, and I know you have a lot to say on this, Dex. What'll happen then is if the Mets continue to play baseball in this fashion, not saying they will, I'm just saying hypothetically, they're playing around 500 ball getting into the summer. You don't think David Stearns is going to start to have some pressure breathing down his neck by Steve Cohen?
Oh,
and then when that inevitably happens, who's the first domino to go? It's your manager that's been here that hasn't moved the needle. So the lack of accountability is what bothers me most about the way that Mendoza operates. I'm not saying that he's not holding players accountable in the clubhouse or in the dugout.
Right.
But from a public perception, we see none of it. There is no fire. There's no moxie. There's nothing with him as a manager with his in-game feel and decision-making. Really haven't seen any of it, if I'm being quite frank, since 2024's first year here. I don't recall much at all last year. And the complacency and, like we're just in a bad rut right now. Like we'll get out of this. I believe in these guys. It's great to believe in them. But all it takes is by going an extra step to say something along the lines of, you know what, we had a really rough homestand and it starts with me. I need to be doing a better job on keeping this team held accountable. And I need to be doing a better job with my own daily decision-making. That's all it takes. That kind of line alone, fans can run with forever and knowing, wow, that is actually really refreshing to hear instead of the same verbatim shtick of, another game, on to the next kind of thing. So all these things cultivate as to why I have the opinions I currently do about Mendoza. And it just feels like as this team is currently constructed and the way he's operated, that he is not going to be a needle mover for them in ways that we would need a manager to be a needle mover with this payroll, with the expectation, and with the hope and belief that this is a team that can go on a big run this year.
What I'll say to that real quick before we move on, because we got to wrap. The seat is hot. The seat is warm. I'll say that. It's getting hot. And I said that. We talked before
you
about
just stepped in your car. It's winter. You just put your butt warmer on.
Yes.
Yeah. You're 5 minutes into it, heated up.
The seat warmer is on. It's on level 1, right? It's on level 1 for the seat warmer right now. We talked about this, that the Mets needed to get off to a good start. Not a great start through 16 games. Carlos Mendoza needs to get off to a good start. I talked about Devin Williams, who's actually been off to a good start. This needed to happen. I think the last part of what you said is important. What he's saying to the media, and he was even asked that after the series finale against the A's about, okay, this has been a rough homestand. Obviously losing 5 in a row. What's got to happen? And, listen, Mendoza's not wrong about this, what I'm about to say, and parallel quoting him here, but he's like, all right, we got the Dodgers, the best team. They got to move on to the next. And yeah, it's tough. And I think actually the Mets probably playing elite level competition is probably a good thing for them right now. I do. But to your point, would it be nice to see him say something like, hey, this is on me? Fans do like to hear that from a manager or coach, that this is on me. They do like to see that and hear that. I don't think you're wrong about that. Real quick, before we get out of here, my number one, it's the lineup. It's the lineup. Because there's been so much change in the lineup, and you got to look up and down at who's producing and who's not producing. Now, there's been some good things in the lineup. You just mentioned one. Alvarez, guy who we thought could have a big season. He has been good. He's finally got moved up in the lineup into the top 6. That's a good thing. We also know Luis Robert Jr. has been good. Should have been playing on Sunday. I'm with you on that. Would have liked to seen some more in a game you needed to win to try to feel good before you go out to the West Coast.
Down a run, have him pinch it.
It's
not that hard to fathom.
Especially when Polanco hadn't had good at bats. He could have had him in there for DH. Not like he had to be out in the field. So you could have seen him there. I'm with you on that, right? But when you look at this lineup, particularly since Soto has been on the IL. So there's 8 games we're talking about. This team is averaging 3.3 runs per game. That's not going to get it done. Against the A's team that most of these 5 games that they've lost here, got swept by the A's, a team that's playing really good. The offense has been better. This team unable to do anything against pitching. 3.3 runs per game is not good. And what that happens with that is it makes it look like this lineup is so dependent on Juan Soto, which is not what we were sold, not what we thought. We thought this was going to be we used the word dynamic. That's the word we were using before the season. This offense is going to be dynamic. It's not going to be heliocentric and focus on this one player. This is not how this lineup was designed to be. So when you've got a Marcus Semien with a 526 OPS, right? When you've got Carson Bench, and I don't want to kill the kid as a rookie, is a 231 OPS. He's got his figures way out through some things. That's going to be tough. Vientos, a guy we were worried about, started off pretty good, but he's cooled off recently, right? Hitless in his last 5 games, 0 for 2 on Sunday, right? That's 17 at bats I'm talking about across the last 5 games.
No hit since the San Francisco Giants series.
No
where
hit since that
500, mind you.
Right.
So
no hit since then. You knew he was going to cool off a little bit. I'm not going to kill the guy. He's still hitting 263 and has a 687 OPS. I think that'll come up a little bit. And Vientos, for the most part, has been fine. It has not been a good homestand for him. So I want to kill him. But the lineup has been hot and cold. That's the best way I could put it. It's been wildly inconsistent. It's been hot and cold. It has to be better. We're running out of time. But all I want to say is that's my number one concern because, as you said, the hitting's been inconsistent. The pitching's been inconsistent. I know it's a long baseball season. Nobody's going to hit all at the same time for a long stretch of period. It never happens in baseball. You hope most of the guys can hit in a bunch at a time, but the hitting's got to get better. And I hope this team can figure out the hitting before Juan Soto comes back, because the way it looks right now, Wardy, it looks like if they don't got Juan Soto, they don't have anything. And if that's going to be the case for the Mets lineup, then none of that is good. So that's why that's my number one concern for the Mets. It's the hitting. So that's my top 3 there. And hitting is number 1. But
that's great. And final thing I'll say in reply to my number 1 is when we talk Francisco Lindor's mental lapses and when we talk a lack of unity and identity with the team, that further brings me to my point about Carlos Mendoza, because again, it starts with him and it ends with him. So just something to bear in mind, Mets fans. Hopefully, fingers crossed, they can get something going sooner rather than later. But the lineup, you're right. They've rolled over and died more often than not at home. I don't care that's frigid City Field. The Arizona Diamondbacks and the Sacramento Rays came here and raked without a problem.
Yep.
I don't want to hear it. The excuses are done. I justified it for a bit. I can't any longer.
Fair enough. I think that's fair. We're not going to be here making excuses. Let us know, what are your concerns? We gave you our top 3 concerns that we have here with the Mets. 7-9 start. Hopefully things can get better this week, but we will have more coming for you later this week on Straight Outta Flushing. We got to run. We've been here long enough. That is the great Tyler Ward. I'm Dexter Henry. We catch you next time. Another edition of Straight Outta Flushing. Peace.